Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to 3 Bridges, my layout in the loft. So, what's this one all about? This is my little shunting puzzle, London goods yard. So, I suppose set 60s, 70s time. And well, looking back about a year ago, none of this existed. So, I was literally just starting this last May. So, a year ago, I had the basic track down and not a lot else, and I have enjoyed operating it and adding to it, and there's still more to do, but it's at a reasonable state. We had a really good hot weekend last weekend, and it was warm up here, pleasant, and it has allowed some of the scenics to dry quite quickly. But it made me realise that in a couple of months' time it will be really hot up here. It can get up to 30. It's great for laying track because the rails are up there longest, and that's the time to pin it, and then that's what I normally do in the summer, pin track. There's not a lot to pin at the moment because I still need to build the second level, and that will take most of this year simply because of other things going on. So what I thought I would like to do is do a sort of summer project that doesn't require me to be up in the loft all the time, for when it's really hot and I can get on something downstairs, but it's still a scene that happens up here. And at the Glasgow exhibition over late Feb, I think it was, in March, I was looking at a lot of freight rolling stock, thinking about what I wanted to do for the more modern era. So this whole lower level is my age of 5 up to sort of mid-20s, and then there's a bit of a break, and then I suppose from, I'm trying to think, we moved to Long Buckby, so from about 95 up into 2023, so about 27, 28 years we were living in Long Buckby in the Midlands, and that's where the second level is going to be based. And I want to have a small freight yard in the second level, and obviously the obvious one is to build is DIRFT. And so that got me thinking about I could do a very small DIRFT freight yard, and there's quite a few different types, but I've also got some other constraints that I need to get in on that board that I'd also need to include, which I'll explain. So just briefly, this is the area I'm thinking of doing the DIRFT rail freight terminus. It's sort of on the second level. It sits above Wendover, where the whole layout sort of starts, and it's before I get into what will be Rugby Station at the far end of the loft. But what I have got is a couple of open framework boards. So there's this one here, it's about 50 centimeters deep, so just on 2 feet, and then next to it is another board that basically sits above Amersham. So I've got just over 3 meters to play with, where I can have a think about track arrangements. But my idea is to just take this whole board downstairs, put the top on it, and basically work on it over the summer, and then I can just bring it up towards the end of the season and probably get a little bit of playability with it by adding some track at the far end. So effectively it becomes a little shunting puzzle all of its own. So I'm back at the model desk downstairs, and there's a couple of things that have sort of helped, I suppose, give some clarity to the idea of doing one scenic board down here. So the last couple of weeks I've been enjoying reading and looking at the images in the 2 James Hilton publications that come out. So there's Model Railway Companion 3, and also the latest second series of ribbons. So there's a lot of things that have inspired me from these publications, but it's more the simplicity of some of the track layouts that has really got my imagination fired up. So this one's Quebec South Shore by Matthew Luncher, and it's literally one line in, splitting into the 3. But I also like the simplicity of the scene, and I appreciate this or Canada. It's not the Midlands, but it's the track layouts that I've sort of gone for in terms of a very simplified layout. And so thinking, well, what could I just do with effectively 2 lines in a goods yard. And then remembering back to the time in Long Buckby, rail freight had gone over to containers, and the whole point of DIRFT was containers. The idea was stuff would come over on the boats, and then they would get freighted up to DIRFT on the trains, where then containers could be offloaded and put onto lorries for redistribution around the country. So it's like a central hub in the Midlands. So lots of these things that you would see either on trains going up to DIRFT or on lorries leaving DIRFT, heading all over the country onto the motorway network. I've gone and got myself a few unpainted, so I've got some joy of doing these up and remembering a lot of the logos and a lot of China shipping, I remember. So that's got me thinking about that. The other thing that's has fired up my imagination this winter is, up until now I've done everything in card, and I do enjoy it, and the scratch building and doing the kit bashing, but I'm watching a lot of YouTubers, especially Boomer, where they're working in the plastic sheeting, plasticard, and so I'd like to have a go at making some of the buildings and artifacts for one scene completely out of plasticard. So that's a new one for me. I think the sensible thing to do is show you what I'm intending to build. I sort of said earlier on, I've got a couple of constraints of space, that also other things going on the boards at this point in the loft. So at the front, I've got my West Coast up and down lines, and then I've also got my East Coast line. So there's just one line that runs around the second deck and up to the final deck, where it'll sort of be in 2 lines. So I've got to get those 3 on. That one's going to run behind the DIRFT unit, and feeding off from it will be the entrance to the freight yard. So that'll spur off some points out of Rugby Station. So I'm just going to go for 2 simple tracks with a pass around loop. Got the potential to store 2 freight trains here, and then so the concrete area around the tracks, and then the main container stack area beyond the tracks. I'm going to have one main warehouse building, and I've got some ideas for that, but again it'll be very much in the modern style that you're seeing, and they're still putting up the buildings even today. So I may even have a half-built building in the background, just to give the impression of a skeleton being started for another one. And then how to unload the containers from the trains and reload them. There's a couple of options. So one is the portable units. Doing that, but they also have the overhead, so gantry cranes at DIRFT as well. So I might have both, but put that in the background, and again, depending on the angle of the shot, I don't need to build all of it. So it'll be probably a couple of months before you'll get to see DIRFT 2, and hopefully at that point I'll have started on the board, the track will be down, and maybe some of the initial architecture for the scene will be starting to be worked on. Anyway, that's the plan for the summer. That's my summer project, and for now I'll be back in the loft working on Marylebone, so Marylebone May, and I'll give you an update towards the end of May on how that's been going. Anyway, as always, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you next time. Cheers.